What if I told you the secret to explosive seedling growth is hiding in your pantry, sitting right next to your breakfast cereal? The transformation I've witnessed in my seedlings after discovering oat bran fermentation has been nothing short of extraordinary, and I'm about to share every detail of this game-changing technique that's turning weak, spindly starts into powerhouse plants from their very first true leaves. The seedling struggle. Are you making this mistake? Every gardener knows the heartbreak of watching carefully sown seeds germinate with promise, only to develop into disappointing seedlings that stretch toward the light with pale, weak stems and lackluster foliage. You've probably experienced the frustration of seedlings that grow tall but fragile, toppling over at the slightest touch, or starts that seem to stall in their development despite your best efforts with grow lights, heat mats, and, careful, watering. The conventional wisdom tells us to use diluted fertilizer once the first true leaves appear, but here's the uncomfortable truth. Most commercial fertilizers are formulated for established plants and miss crucial elements that seedlings desperately need during their most vulnerable growth phase. Traditional fertilizers focus heavily on the big three nutrients, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, but young seedlings require a more nuanced nutritional profile to develop the robust root systems and sturdy stems that will carry them through transplanting and into productive maturity. They need readily available amino acids for protein synthesis, B vitamins for cellular metabolism, trace minerals in bioavailable forms, and beneficial microorganisms to colonize their developing root zones. Most importantly, they need these nutrients in gentle, non-burning concentrations that won't overwhelm their delicate root systems. This is precisely where oat bran fermentation enters the picture, offering a complete nutritional package specifically suited to the needs of emerging plants. Unveiling the oat bran secret. Oat bran is the outer layer of the oat groat, removed during processing to create refined oats, and it's an absolute nutritional powerhouse that most gardeners have never considered for their plants. This humble byproduct contains an impressive array of proteins, complex carbohydrates, B vitamins including thiamine and folate, minerals like phosphorus, magnesium, iron, and zinc, plus beneficial compounds like beta-glucans that stimulate biological activity. When we ferment oat bran, we're essentially pre-digesting these nutrients, breaking down complex molecules into simpler forms that plant roots can absorb immediately without expending precious energy on uptake processes. The science behind why this works is, honestly, pretty fascinating and relates to how plants have evolved alongside microorganisms. In natural ecosystems, seeds germinate in soil that's rich with decomposing organic matter and active microbial populations. These microbes, produce enzymes that break down organic compounds, releasing nutrients in forms that emerging seedlings can actually access. They also produce plant growth hormones like auxins and cytokinins that stimulate both root development and shoot growth. When we start seeds in sterile potting mix under artificial lights, we're really removing them from this biological context, essentially asking them to grow in a nutritional desert. The oat bran ferment kind of recreates that rich microbial environment, inoculating your seedlings with the biological partners they've evolved to depend upon, while at the same time providing a buffet of readily available nutrients. Crafting your super ferment step by step is actually pretty straightforward. Creating your oat bran ferment requires nothing more than oat bran, water, a small amount of molasses, and, patience. Start with 2 tablespoons of oat bran in a quart-sized jar. This ratio gives you a concentrated ferment that you'll dilute before application, making each batch go remarkably far. Add 1 teaspoon of unsulfured molasses or brown sugar to feed the fermentation microbes, then fill the jar with dechlorinated water. If your tap water is chlorinated, just let it sit out overnight before using, or use rainwater if you collect it. The chlorine in municipal water will inhibit the beneficial bacteria we're trying to cultivate, so this dechlorination step is, honestly, crucial for success. Stir the mixture vigorously to distribute the oat bran and dissolve the molasses, then cover the jar loosely with a cloth secured with a rubber band or use a lid set on top without tightening. This allows gases produced during fermentation to escape while preventing contaminants from entering. Place your jar somewhere at room temperature, out of direct sunlight, where you'll remember to stir it daily. That daily stirring is important because it redistributes the microbes and prevents the oat bran from settling into a compacted layer at the bottom. You'll notice the mixture becoming cloudy within 24 hours as bacterial populations explode, and a pleasant, slightly sweet and yeasty aroma will develop over the next few days. So, the fermentation timeline can really vary depending on temperature, but generally, your oat bran ferment reaches its peak potency somewhere between 5 and 7 days. You'll know it's ready when the liquid develops a mildly tangy smell, kind of reminiscent of yogurt or maybe a sourdough starter. Plus, the oat bran particles should have mostly broken down into a sort of murky suspension. If you notice some foam or bubbles on the surface, that's totally normal, and actually a great sign that fermentation is active. But, if at any point you catch a truly foul, rotten smell, or you spot any pink or black mold, something definitely went wrong. Usually it's because of inadequate stirring, or maybe contaminated ingredients. In that case, you should just discard that batch and start fresh. The good news is, with the right technique, failures are pretty rare, and you'll find that you quickly gain confidence in this process. The real proof of this ferment's power, honestly, becomes undeniable when you see treated seedlings right next to untreated controls. In my own trials, seedlings that received diluted oat bran ferment from their first true leaf stage showed dramatically thicker stem development. We're talking about stem diameters often 50% greater than the controls by the time they reach transplant size. This sturdy stem structure isn't just nice to look at, it's actually functionally critical, because it means the plant can support more foliage and eventually heavier fruit loads without needing staking or extra support. And the leaves on ferment-treated seedlings, they display a deeper, richer color, which indicates higher chlorophyll content and more efficient photosynthesis. They're also noticeably larger and have a more substantial texture. Now, below the soil surface, the transformation is even more impressive. When you carefully remove seedlings from their containers to check out root development, treated plants reveal dense, fibrous root systems that fill the entire pot volume. In contrast, untreated controls usually show sparser, less branched roots that are mostly concentrated near the stem. This kind of robust root development translates directly to transplant success, because well-rooted seedlings experience way less shock when they're moved to the garden. They establish quickly in their new location and start growing vigorously within days, instead of spending weeks just recovering. Over the years, I've tracked transplanted seedlings through entire growing seasons, and time after time those started with oat bran ferment reach maturity earlier, produce more prolifically, and show greater resilience to environmental stresses like heat, drought, and pest pressure. The testimonials from gardeners who've adopted this technique echo my experiences. One grower reported that her tomato seedlings, typically spindly and difficult to harden off, became so robust after oat bran ferment treatments that neighbors asked what commercial growing formula she was using. A market gardener shared that his transplant loss rate dropped from nearly 20% to less than 5% after incorporating the ferment into his seedling routine, representing significant cost savings in a commercial operation. Home gardeners consistently report that the intimidation factor of starting seeds from scratch diminishes dramatically when they know they have this tool to ensure strong, healthy development from germination onward. Application protocol for maximum impact is honestly pretty straightforward. Using your finished ferment effectively requires proper dilution and timing. The concentrated ferment is far too strong to apply directly to seedlings and would likely cause nutrient burn or bacterial overload. Instead, dilute 1 tablespoon of strained ferment into 1 gallon of water for your standard seedling drench. This dilution provides ample nutrition and microbial inoculation without overwhelming young plants. Begin applications when seedlings develop their first true leaves, which signals that they've exhausted the nutrients stored in the seed and are ready to feed actively through their roots. Apply your diluted ferment as you would water, thoroughly moistening the potting mix until it drains from the bottom of containers. Frequency matters significantly for optimal results. During the rapid growth phase from first true leaves until seedlings reach transplant size, apply the diluted ferment weekly, alternating with plain water waterings to prevent salt buildup in the growing medium. As seedlings approach transplant size, you can increase application frequency to twice weekly for a final growth push that prepares them for the transition to outdoor conditions. Some growers like to give seedlings a final ferment drench the day before transplanting, providing a microbial boost that colonizes roots and helps them establish in garden soil. This practice seems to reduce transplant shock noticeably, with seedlings showing less wilting and faster recovery. Storage of your concentrated ferment is straightforward but, important. Strain out the solid oat bran particles through cheesecloth or a fine mesh strainer, making sure to squeeze and extract all the liquid you can. The solids, well, they can go right into your compost pile, where they'll keep breaking down and adding nutrients. Store the strained liquid ferment in the refrigerator, where it'll stay viable for up to 2 months, though, just so you know, potency does gradually decline over time, so fresher is always better. A lot of gardeners find it handy to keep a continuous fermentation cycle going during seed starting season, starting a new batch each week so fresh ferment is always on hand. The small bit of effort quickly becomes routine, and honestly, the results make it an indispensable part of your seedling care protocol. Embracing oat bran fermentation for your seedlings is, more than just adding another technique to your gardening toolkit. It's really about shifting how you approach plant development from the very start. Instead of seeing seedlings as these fragile, needy little things that demand pricey commercial products and constant attention, you're recognizing them as resilient organisms that can truly thrive when you provide the right biological partnerships and nutrition. This kind of perspective change, it ripples through your entire growing season, because plants that start strong tend to keep that vigor at every stage, and in the end, you'll be rewarded with abundant harvests that reflect the care and wisdom you put in from the very beginning. The real beauty of this method is in its accessibility and, honestly, its affordability. Oat bran only costs pennies per batch, so it's totally doable for gardeners on any budget to give their seedlings nutrition that can match or even beat those expensive commercial products. The process doesn't need any special equipment or advanced scientific know-how, just basic ingredients and the patience to let fermentation do its thing. Whether you're starting a dozen tomato plants for your backyard, or, say, propagating hundreds of seedlings for a market garden, oat bran ferment scales up or down with ease and still keeps its effectiveness. So, if you're ready to totally transform your seedling game and experience the confidence that comes from growing robust, resilient plants right from day one, go ahead and subscribe to the Living Soil Lab for more innovative, science-backed techniques that tap into the power of natural processes. Feel free to share this video with fellow gardeners who might be struggling with seedling success, or really anyone interested in sustainable, effective growing methods that don't rely on commercial products or complicated steps. Together, we're building a community of growers who get that the best gardening solutions often come from simple, time-tested processes, supported by a modern understanding of plant biology and microbial ecology. Your supercharged seedlings are just waiting for you, and trust me, they're going to blow your mind.